That right there, my friends, is how you transfer features from one layer to another without typing a single attribute. And in fact, this one comes from an entirely different layer. So worth it to learn how to do this. Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Jeff and this is GIS Chops. I'm going to show you 5 tools that use a thing called field mapping. And this is going to level up your data wrangling chops. You're going to be able to transfer features from one layer to another layer without typing any attributes. I am honestly embarrassed about how long this took me to implement. It's a simple time-saving hack, and it's going to save you so much typing. But there are some pitfalls when you try to implement this, so stick around to see the struggles I faced and how I got around them. This simple automation tip uses field mappings that you're able to configure in the editor settings dialog. Field mapping is used by a few tools as you edit your data, including transfer attributes, copy parallel, mirror, and the combination of copy and paste special, or cut and paste special. I actually never use the cut option while editing or transferring data, so I just ignore that one. Once you configure field mapping, attributes will transfer from your source layer to your target layer. As with all things in ArcGIS Pro, you can get to this editor settings window several ways. From the Edit tab, you can get there by clicking this settings gear icon in the Manage Edits group. Or again on the Edit tab, you can click this pop-out button in the Tools group. And a third, possibly more efficient way is to hover over this Editing Grid toggle and select Grid Settings. This last way is handy because you don't have to switch to the Edit tab in case you're on a different tab. I'm going to give Corey Kramer a shout out for that last tip. If you don't know Corey Kramer, you haven't been in the Esri community site very much because he's answering questions everywhere on that site. Now that we have the editor settings dialog open, we need to go to the field mapping side tab. I looked this up and they are actually called side tabs. At the top, there's a target drop-down and a source drop-down. I personally would have swapped the order of these two. Having source on the left and target on the right makes more sense to me, but they didn't check with me. We're going to start out with the easiest transfer, what I like to call the unicorn transfer, where all of the fields match in name and type from the source layer to the target layer, like that ever happens. As a source layer, I am selecting the USA Census Populated Places layer, and for my target layer, I'm choosing the My Populated Places layer. And would you look at that? All of the fields automatically matched up. How easy is the life of a data wrangler? What do they even do all day? Now let's select a few features and go to the Edit tab and click Copy. Or you could also use Ctrl-C on the keyboard. Now we're going to click this drop down below the Paste button and choose Paste Special. Or we could also use the keyboard Ctrl-Alt-V. From here we pick My Populated Places. Also make sure Keep Source Attribute Values is checked, and then I hit OK. Now if we go to the Attributes pane, you're going to see that all of the attributes made the trip to the new layer. Now let's run that back and try it on a more realistic scenario. This time the field types are the same, but the field names don't match. For this example, I'll keep the source layer, but change the target layer to be Whack Fields Populated Places. Now I'll fast forward as I map these fields manually. Again, I'll select a bunch of features. Come on, select a bunch of features. Alright, that was weird. But it shows you a little problem you can encounter when selecting features. Notice how when I try to select features from my source layer, nothing gets selected. Early on when I switched to Pro, I would get so frustrated by this. I would come over here to the List by Selection tab in the TOC and make sure my layer was marked as selectable, and then bang my head against the wall because I couldn't select anything. I would actually close Pro and start it up again. After that, I could magically select features. It turns out my problem was over here. When you paste features into a layer, there's a setting in the options on the Editing side tab in the Productivity section that says Activate Move Tool after all paste operations. Because the Move tool became active, I couldn't select these features because they're read-only. Once I hit this back arrow and close the Move tool, I can select features again. I hope that saves you a little bit of frustration. It's also a good reason to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell and select all. I have lots of these little nuggets scattered throughout my videos, and if you don't watch the whole thing, you don't pick up on them. Now back to the process. Once I have some features selected this time, I'm going to use the keyboard Ctrl-C to copy features, then Ctrl-Alt-V to open the Paste Special dialog. Choose my new target layer with the whack fields and hit OK. Another visit to the attributes pane shows us the attributes transferred easily. Now I'm going to show a third option, or the closest to real life example, where field names and types don't match and I need to manipulate the values of some fields to work in my target fields. For this example, I'm going to use a workflow that I use all the time. Here's my parcel fabric tax parcels layer. I'll be copying these features over to my published parcels layer. When I open the field mapping in the editor settings and specify my source and target layers, none of the fields match up. In fact, I don't have any fields that are a direct transfer. I have to manipulate fields in the tax parcels layer or grab the subdivision name from the subdivisions layer. And here's how I get this done. I'm going to switch from the Fields tab to the Expressions tab. Once I do that, I have a return statement and some curly braces. This isn't very helpful, so I'm going to go back to the Fields tab and I'm going to pick some dummy fields to go into my source fields. This is going to give me a better example of what that return statement looks like. Now when I switch to the Expressions tab, there's more added to the return statement. The format for the return statement is target field name in double quotes, followed by a colon, then the constant $source feature, immediately followed by the source field name in single quotes enclosed in square brackets. If you have multiple lines, you separate them with commas. Right now it's set up for a single value in the source field that goes to the target field. That isn't what I'm trying to do. I need to manipulate the source fields before they go into my target fields. To do that, I'm going to add some arcade variables and statements before the return statement. So you don't have to sit through watching me type. I'm going to load an expression I saved to disk earlier. This first line creates a variable called acres and sets it to a combination or a concatenation of two functions. The first is the text function that expresses the contents of the stated area field as a number with 2 decimal places. The second function is the domain name function because my stated area unit field was returning the domain code instead of the description. The next line creates a variable called parcelNum. For this one I needed the contents of the name field in my source layer, but I needed it to be 7 digits with leading zeros to match my ownership database. I struggled with this one. It turns out you need to convert the original parcel number that are numbers stored in a text field to an actual number using the number function. Then turn that back into text using the text function with the format parameter as 7 zeros in single quotes. Took all of that to get my leading zeros. My next line is the lot number. For this one I'm just grabbing the right 2 characters of the parcelNum variable. This one was easy. The next 3 lines are to get the subdivision name. I first grab the subdivisions layer and use the centroid of my source feature and intersect it with the subdivisions layer, then getting the contents of the name field and storing it in the subname variable. Once all that pre-logic is done, I can populate my return statement, which is actually just a dictionary with the keys being the target layer's field names and the values that will go into those fields. Now I just use the corresponding variables I created in the pre-logic. Now I'll click OK on the editor setting dialog and test it out. I'll select a few of these parcels, click copy, then paste special and paste them into my published parcels layer. I'll open up the attributes pane and see if everything came across as planned. All of my attributes made the trip, and if you think about it, this is pretty handy. I have to do 0 typing to get these attributes in the target layer. And let's face it, typing attributes is when most errors get introduced into our data. Now let's talk about some of the pitfalls you might experience while implementing field mapping. First off, you'll need to pay attention to layer selectability and layer editability. You may want to have only your source layer selectable. As for editability, if your target layer isn't editable, it won't show up in the drop-down of the Paste Special dialog. Secondly, in the Editor Settings dialog, after you have set your source and target layers, the dialog will auto-match fields that have the same name. But if you switch to the Expression tab and do some manipulations like I did earlier, then switch back to the Fields tab, you'll notice all of the source fields are gone. If you click any of these 3 buttons along the top, the Reset, Auto-Match, or Clear, or if you select a field over here in the Source Fields area, you're going to wipe out the work you've done with the Expressions tab. So you can't be switching back and forth. It's a good idea to get everything matched up on the Fields tab before you switch to the Expression tab. If you'll notice, they warn you of this pitfall right here. This brings me to my next tip. If you're going to be manipulating values on the Expressions tab, it's wise to export your expression to an expression file on disk. That way, if you screw it up by clicking something on the Fields tab, you can always reload it. This last pitfall had me pulling my hair out and wanting to forget the whole thing and just go back to typing attributes. I was clicking this little green check mark as you were told to do before running scripts or expressions. But guess what I learned? This no features found error, it's bogus. For some reason, you'll get this error every time when you add expressions. So click the check mark to see if you have any syntax errors, but once you get this no features found error, you should be good to test it. The most common error I encountered while writing these expressions was I forgot to put a comma after each line inside the curly braces in the return statement. And that's it. So get out there and wrangle some data with that new skill. And remember what Ozzy Osbourne said, it's never too late to learn how to love and forget how to hate. Now go watch that video. We'll see you next time.